The bands of the British Army, famous the world over for tradition, splendour and musicianship. But it was not always so. At the end of the Crimean War in the middle of the last century, there was a grand victory review of the Allied armies, at which the massed bands of the British Army struck up God Save the Queen. The bands did not even have a common pitch. Commander-in-Chief of the army was Queen Victoria's cousin, His Royal Highness the Duke of Cambridge, and he was appalled. Tradition has it that this was his motivation for founding a British military school of music. His achievement was commemorated by one of the greatest honours the British can bestow on anyone. Today, the Royal Military School of Music, Kneller Hall, makes Twickenham, near London, famous for more than rugby football. As well as training musicians for the military bands of the British Army, Kneller Hall is also a repository of expertise and historical knowledge going back for more than 100 years, and is regarded as a world authority on military music. The school museum houses a fine collection of historical musical instruments, some of which are used for special performances. Among them a bugle which last sounded at the charge of the Light Brigade. An extensive music library contains scores and band parts of marches and national anthems from all over the world, as well as a great fund of knowledge about military music.
Yes, Kenneth Orford is the pen name of the late Major Frederick Joseph Ricketts, the pen name under which he wrote all his famous marches.
The only serving officers at the school are the Commandant, the Director of Music and the Adjutant. The Director of Music is responsible for the whole musical training program and is assisted by a team of civilian professors.
When you first play in the morning, the chromatic scale's the first thing you should play, because it not only makes it automatic fingering for you after a bit, and also it ensures that all the keys are opening correctly. So this is starting on right E with left F.
The instrumental professors are professional musicians who give individual practical tuition. Each pupil bandsman has been selected by his regiment for the one-year course and has already been trained as a soldier and as a medical assistant. He may already be a member of a regimental band, but some pupils are taken directly from junior training at 18.
Yes, stop again. Yes. Was that an idea of your own to ignore the dynamic? Well, that's fine, but this is when you do it as a solo. What you've got to remember in the A1 trade test is that the examiner will have a copy of this and will be checking, and then you'll think you've sort of had a little bit of a seizure if he does that, you see.
Now, you've got the grade 8 examination out of the way yesterday, so I think perhaps we'll have a holiday and play a duet, okay?
Okay.
Good. Now I want you to go from here, and I want to be very, very aware of when I'm supposed to play the second part. So you'll have to breathe absolutely in time, and the tempo will be something like bum 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 doo da doo da doo da doo. Good.
It's got to build up, but not too much. Now, just a little bit less. That's it. No. I suggest that was all right. You played it quite well. But if you were doing your associated board grade 5 theory, you would make those 4 demi-semiquavers and put them on that quaver. Yeah. But if you're playing it for a concert, you can do what you like, within reason. I think Chopin probably...
As well as studying their own instruments to diploma level, the pupils may learn another during their year at Kneller Hall, usually keyboard or strings.
This is the entree by Schubert. All right, and a little bit more noise. First finger and bigger. Big gap.
Pupil bandsmen are formed into 4 companies, each making up as far as possible a balanced band of about 40 players, under the command of a student bandmaster. Student bandmasters may already have studied at the school as pupil bandsmen, but they have to pass a stiff entrance examination before returning for a course that will last for 3 years.
When you come in, with your glissando,
It's part of their training to help in teaching the pupils, often under the supervision of the school bandmaster.
Okay, you were trying to make a slight rubato at the entry where the horns have the glissando that you just mentioned. But if you do that, certainly relax and let that part come out. But then you must pick up the basic tempo again.
The student bandmasters are skilled in at least one wind instrument. But during their course, they must also gain a working knowledge of every other instrument in the band. A clarinetist, for example, will soon find that he has to acquire a new set of techniques when learning the cornet.
I have trouble in actually starting them.
Yes. Well, place the tongue firmly behind the teeth. Ta. Think of that syllable. Ta. Ta, 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 tee. Right? That's it.
Remember, these students have to master the elements of a new instrument every 3 months. The bandmaster's course is highly demanding, with intensive classes in musical theory, including harmony and composition.
Can we do this bit to begin with? Ti, ti, ta, tom, pom, pom, pom. And then we're going to, on the 4th quaver, we're going to a dominant or a dominant self. What would you say?
Dominant self.
Would you? All right. this without. Does your silence mean that you don't really care one way or the other? In actual fact, I don't think it matters a button.
Yes, the reason I make you sing that, you see, if you were teaching a young player...
A bandmaster has to be capable of taking an orchestral piece and transcribing it for the wind instruments of a military band, which have different ranges and pitch.
You've got the Les Prelude, you've got the first page of the conductor's copy of Les Prelude in front of you, and you've got a couple of pages of the opening, the relative sounds, the opening of the full orchestral score. Now, whilst I've been very strong with you to say that we are duty-bound to reproduce as near to the orchestra as we can, there does occur the occasion when one can just exert and take a little bit of license, artistic license, and I feel that this particular score, with its very difficult introduction, needs that particular license.
Perhaps the most important skill for a student bandmaster to learn is conducting, the art of commanding, controlling, and drawing the best out of a band. Video cameras record the student's technique, and the director of music takes a close personal interest.
You take that run in again to the andante maestoso. Quite good, but I think I would like you to see more control over the entry bar, and then when we get on to the 12/8, really control that accompaniment with a very pointed beat.
Same spot, please.
The pressure of work at Kneller Hall is unremitting, and not everyone can stand the pace. But successful students gain qualifications which are equal to those of graduates of the Royal College of Music or the Royal Academy. As well as all their musical work, student bandmasters act as squad and company commanders for pupil bandsmen.
Duties! Sharp!
Chris?
And they take their share of administrative duties. They organize sport and other activities. And even find time for less serious music making.
Oh, goodbye, my Coney Island baby. Farewell, my own true love, true love. I'm gonna go away and leave you. Never see you any. Never gonna see you any. I'm gonna sail upon that ferry boat, never to return again. So goodbye. Goodbye, my Coney Island. Goodbye, my Coney Island. Goodbye, my Coney Island band.
school dance band is often booked for outside engagements. The brass band, too, is an extracurricular activity. But the supreme occasions of the year, which bring together all the different strands of training at the school, are the Kneller Hall concerts during the summer, which give pupil bandsmen and student bandmasters experience of performing before a live and often critical audience. More than a century and a quarter ago, the founders of the Royal Military School of Music set out to achieve the highest standards of musical training. Today, the traditions fostered by Kneller Hall continue to add to the pride and the prestige of the British Army all over the world. And the bandsmen provide, too, a reserve in every regiment, trained to give medical and other auxiliary services in times of emergency. Men and women who are, in the words of the Kneller Hall motto, second to none.